September 11th signaled a call to arms for America's war on terror. So, too, in a sense, was the call to arms for an army of journalists. For some reporters, it's become a dangerous and even deadly assignment. Now, we take you behind the story to show you the very human impressions of our own journalists in the war zone. From Afghanistan, a fresh perspective on the place, the people, and the power behind a conflict, and a story the whole world is watching.
Mike Taibbi. Feels good. I don't want to say how many years I've been a reporter. It's more than 30. It's closer to 35.
We came in and it was a long trip because we were delayed. One of the security vehicles who was accompanying us broke down, and we sat for an hour sitting ducks, really, after having heard gunshots on the way by some gunmen who had taken over a Taliban position.
It's open season again for the bandits, and we're inviting targets. We travel with really expensive gear. I'm sure the word gets out that we also travel with cash. We kept hearing stories about there being bounties on the head of journalists. You drive along slowly on these roads, and people would gather on the road and stop your vehicle or attempt to stop the vehicle. That's where the trouble can begin. So you shout to your driver, go, 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 and you get through. This is base camp Black Widow. Our yard here is about, I guess a quarter acre. You'd call it a postage stamp lot back in the States. They've hung some sheets so we have some privacy, and the people who live in the houses in this little part of the village have some privacy from us as well. They're cooking for, what, 600 mujahideen, right?
Yeah.
Bill, this is a fine-looking cattle here. Nice fresh meat for 600 people. How are you? Salam alaikum. Is it going to taste good? We get some rice with that? We get rice too?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And this lovely building, which is, how would you guess, 16 feet square, 16 by 16, will be the billet for 6 of us.
Oh! That's weak.
What helps more than anything for me is the collaborative effort you have with the people you work with.
All right. Did it.
In this team, we all know each other, and you watch each other's back. This is a band of brothers, too, so I'll introduce them. Bill Angelucci, on my left, our cameraman.
Hello.
To my right, far right, Paul West, an old friend, a sound recordist, technician. And to my immediate right, a guy whose name nobody can pronounce. It takes forever. His name is Ara Ayer. Okay. What makes this livable are a number of things. I think you got to have a sense of humor. We got ourselves a fine Afghan-style toilet here, Bill.
Yeah.
Take a look. Just open it up a little bit.
Yeah.
The great frustration and I think unsettling aspect of 9/11 was that those of us who process information for a living and pass information along to other people for a living found it difficult. I did. To process this story and find a way to do stories that made me feel useful as a reporter. That's why I wanted to come here. We did a story that struck us because this is one of the things that happens in war, about the deaths of many, many people. I'll leave it as loose as that.
Tora Bora. For the last 3 days and nights, the U.S. has pounded this area in southeastern Afghanistan. The intended target, Osama bin Laden and his al-Qaeda fighters. Apparently in the line of fire, 2 mountain villages, today leveled with many dead and wounded. Many were brought by relatives to this hospital in Jalalabad. The dead in 1 room, the injured in 5 rooms, and in every spare hallway.
This is mistake. This is mistake.
To see for ourselves, we made the 30-mile drive over the punishing, dusty terrain, the same road any of bin Laden's pursuers would have to take.
It's a long way, and it's right in the teeth of it, and the ground assault hadn't started yet, and there were al-Qaeda in the hills and on the roads, and it was dicey. But we wanted to get to this village, 2 villages, in fact.
Along the way, a U.S. B-52 dropped its payload in front of us in the direction of Tora Bora, while another circled directly overhead. Then we came to Landakil, one of the villages reportedly struck in the weekend bombing. Several houses and the district office were destroyed.
It says U.S. with a serial number and then Cerno and the word surface.
One villager told me Arabs had been here, but on a different night. Then a 2-mile hike to the village of Kamado. Here we saw more than 15 homes obliterated. A guard dog guarded nothing. The air was thick with the stench of death.
There was a stench of death everywhere you went, as long as you were downwind of it. I know that smell. I mean, I've known it for 25 years. More than that. And it was everywhere. And the villagers told us that they'd done a count.
Villagers claim 115 people were killed in the bombing, though we could not confirm that independently. As one man said prayers for the dead tonight atop the rubble of what had been his home, there were still no clear answers to explain just what happened here and why.
You know, stories in a war like this have a very short shelf life, because 2 nights later, the ground assault against the Tora Bora positions of Osama bin Laden and his al-Qaeda people began. And that story about Kamada was gone. I mean, I'd like to revisit it someday, but not yet. People die in wars. This is the end of the village, huh?
Yeah, under the village.
If you put a good story on the air and you feel good about it, you sleep well at night, you've advanced it, and the next day you pick them up and put them down and do it again.
Still ahead.
It was clear at one point that an anti-Taliban Northern Alliance tank was being targeted by the Taliban. Well, it didn't stop 3 or 4 young reporters, probably on their first war assignment, to go up to the tank to try to get a better shot of that tank, even though there was a very good shot 50 or 60 yards away in a bunker, which was where I was watching what was to proceed.
Wow, that was close.
Covering the war in Afghanistan has been a unique experience for me. I've spent a lot of my time here covering an air war. You watch for B-52s in the sky, you follow bombs, and you watch them drop and create plumes of smoke on mountaintops, while on the ground, proxy armies are doing the real fighting. This particular war was a little different in that journalists were specifically targeted. I'm Jim Maceda. When I'm not on assignment, I'm based in NBC London. I've been with NBC News for 21 years, and while I don't really keep count of my war assignments, this one is probably around 12 or 13 or 14. Many of the dangers here are predictable, many of them are manageable. If you don't make stupid moves or decisions, you can probably come out alive most of the time. I'm thinking of one experience in Calcutta during that tank battle. It was clear at one point that an anti-Taliban Northern Alliance tank was being targeted by the Taliban. Well, it didn't stop 3 or 4 young reporters, probably on their first war assignment, to go up to the tank to try to get a better shot of that tank, even though there was a very good shot 50 or 60 yards away in a bunker, which was where I was watching what was to proceed.
Wow, that was close.
A shell came in. Luckily, it didn't kill anyone.
Hit. You hit? Yeah. You hit?
Not in his body, but one journalist got shrapnel clear through his thigh. You've always got to gauge danger and risk against doing your job. It was no different here in Afghanistan.
Everything in the Jeep tipped over on top of us.
We were extremely careful about where we moved in this country. You couldn't really go much further than 20 or 30 miles in any direction from Kabul without having some kind of military protection.
Kabul is a city on edge, an explosive mix of 2 million people, mostly refugees, hundreds of thousands of weapons, and no government, where a ration card or bowl of rice can trigger a riot. Robbery, especially of foreigners, is on the rise. Armed guards now protect all hotels housing journalists. 8 reporters killed in Afghanistan in the last 3 weeks, 5 in armed robberies.
Banditry here in this country is an ongoing problem. We could not drive to places like Kandahar in the south or Jalalabad in the east without having armor, which we didn't have, without having our own weapons, which we refused to carry, or without having some special kind of security organized, which was extremely difficult.
In the streets, a Northern Alliance-imposed police force tries to fill the vacuum left by the Taliban. About 1,200 poorly trained cops overwhelmed. Ask Afghans here what they need most. I need basic security, says this man. There is none inside Kabul. My car was stolen yesterday. This place is chaos. The Northern Alliance, the only authority, in charge but not in control.
We never felt any kind of sense of true security. We always had to watch our backs, and we always had to hope that the money we were paying out to our protectors was enough to buy their loyalty. The threat of war, being targeted as a journalist, the difficulty of the terrain, the environment, the lack of resources, the need to always watch your back, and the exhaustion at the end of each day is something that has changed me in the sense that I think it's probably made me a little less aggressive, a little bit more tolerant. The orphan story was a difficult one to do, a very moving one to do. I didn't think it would be as moving and as personally difficult as it turned out to be.
They may have children's faces, but have lived a lifetime of hurt. Some 900 boys and girls from 4 to 15, among Afghanistan's 1 million orphans of war and poverty.
The first impression you get is one of children who are young, who are underdeveloped physically and old beyond their years mentally, especially our main character, Fazl.
Fazl, at 15, is one of the oldest. This is all I've got, he says, what I'm wearing. And this has been his home since he was 7. He has only known civil war. His first memories, the blast of mortars. It scared me a lot when I was young. We had to always lie down to avoid being hit. Until that day, Fazl came home from school and found both his parents killed by a shell. I used to chat with them in my dreams, he says, but that was long ago.
He has no souvenirs from his parents. He has no photos of them, no pieces of clothing, nothing at all to remind him of his mother and father except memories, and those memories are starting to fade.
Now Fazl spends hours reading the Quran and praying in the orphanage's mosque. That helped him through those weeks of U.S. airstrikes, some bombs falling only yards from the grounds. We were frightened at first, but we got used to it. Kabul's orphanage was always a forgotten place, just managing to survive. Now the water well is drying up, not enough for washing and drinking. The pharmacy almost empty. We've received no medicine in 5 years, says this doctor. Nothing for children's skin diseases. We don't even have Band-Aids for cuts.
It was cold outside. These boys were still wearing old cracked summer sandals. They had only the clothes that they wear on their back. Absolutely no food left. They had enough for 2 weeks of rice and beans. It looked like slop when it was served in this Dickensian kitchen.
The staff hasn't been paid for 4 months. Fazl's carpentry class must recycle old wood and nails. The Taliban is gone, but so far only chaos and crime have replaced it.
But as someone rightly said, getting rid of the Taliban will prove to be the easy part. The hard part is going to make peace and bring peace to this country. There is just so much to do. It's not that you can reconstruct and rebuild this nation. This nation has to be built, period.
Still ahead.
12-year-old Arazu sees herself as a doctor. Only 10, Farina already knows what she wants to be.
But the 6th one, all the way on the right next to me, was the shyest and the smallest of all of them. And when she said what she wanted to do, it just blew our socks off. I'm Chip Reed, and I'm one of the new arrivals here in Afghanistan, the new kid on the block, basically. Believe it or not, there are still people living in these areas. To grow up in this area among all this poverty and hunger, and in the winter, just horrendous cold. Add to that mines. Take a look right here. See that rock right there that is painted half red? Well, that means this is an area that is still uncleared of landmines. This is the most densely mined country in the world, and anywhere you see those rocks that are half painted red, if I stepped right there, I would be in the danger zone. Right here, I'm okay, or at least they say I'm okay.
This is the face of Afghanistan's landmine crisis. This boy lost a leg to a mine. It nearly took his life. There are as many as 10 million mines in Afghanistan. They kill or injure about 10 people a week. Most are children. In Kabul, entire hospital wards are filled with young victims.
It was heartbreaking. There were a couple of parents in there who were almost in mourning over this, because in this country it's hard enough to survive, but trying to survive without a leg or an arm or a hand is really an incredible challenge. Now, we also went up to some of the villages in the area where many of these children had been injured and saw the organizations that are involved in demining. Halo Trust, for example, is the organization we went with. That's the organization that Princess Diana used to do work with.
Finding mines is agonizingly slow. Millions of acres to be cleared, inches at a time. Here in the villages just north of Kabul, 50 people have been killed or injured in less than 2 months. Highly trained dogs do much of the work. Here, one catches a scent and sits, the signal that he has found a mine.
There are hundreds of dogs in this country that are involved in sniffing out mines, and they mostly do it on the shoulders of the road, and they go about 10 or 15 feet in on a leash and come back out. It's very treacherous work for the dogs. They lose about 7 a year, dogs that step on these mines. This entire area is absolutely littered with mines, but there are safe paths where you can walk. They're defined by these rocks.
In fact, a mine is found just 2 feet from the path. It is detonated, and with that, a child's life or limb is saved.
Now, not all of Kabul or Afghanistan is destroyed. You can see up here on the hills that those houses are intact. Yes, there is a lot of poverty here. People certainly could use everything from food to windows, but at least they're surviving. And in fact, one of the things that really surprised me when I arrived here is the amount of economic activity, bustle, energy on the streets. It really is quite extraordinary. You can see women. They're a little hard to come by right now. There are always more men on the streets than women, but let me find some women for you here. They still, right down here you can see, they still wear the burqas, almost all of them. And a lot of Americans thought that as soon as the Taliban left, the women would be throwing off their burqas and be out dancing in the streets. It hasn't been like that at all. This is still a very conservative society. And for a woman, as one Afghan woman explained to me, for her to take off the burqa would be like an American woman taking off her shirt and walking down the street half naked. So it hasn't happened.
In the rural Afghan village of Jelga, nearly all the students in this school are girls.
When we walked in, all the girls looked up at us in unison, and it was just amazing to see all those big eyes open up like they were looking at some invasion from a foreign planet.
They already know how to read, how to add, and how to subtract. But getting to this point has not been easy. For the past 5 years, by order of the ultra-conservative Taliban government, most Afghan girls have been barred from the classroom. Jelga, though, is a village with an independent spirit, and led by the village elders, the people here refused to comply.
This was an idyllic village. When we arrived there, the contrast between villages we had seen north of Kabul was just stunning. This Jelga area, just 2 hours south of Kabul, was beautiful. There were crops in the fields. The kids had smiles on their faces. It was like a picture in time of what Afghanistan used to be and what it could be again in the future.
They hid the girls' school in the home of a village doctor.
We were very afraid. We were continuing because we had to fight for our rights.
This teacher, Deba, says the students were terrified, afraid that any knock on the door could be the Taliban coming to take them away. Deba feared that if found, she would be beaten. But now the Taliban are gone, and the girls are free to learn in peace.
In many ways, Jelga is a typical Afghan village, but in one key way, it is not. Because of their access to education, many young girls here have very big dreams.
12-year-old Arazu sees herself as a doctor. Only 10, Farina already knows what she wants to be.
But the sixth one, all the way on the right next to me, was the shyest and the smallest of all of them. And when she said what she wanted to do, it just blew our socks off. She said that she wanted to be president because she wanted to help her people. It's just amazing that a little girl in a country that has discriminated against women so egregiously for so long could dream that big. Well, this is Home Sweet Home in Kabul for NBC News. This is actually a pretty fancy house by Kabul standards. We paid $300 a month the first month that NBC News was here, and then all the media started flooding into town. Demand went up, and the price is now $1,200 a month. Take a look at the water we have here. Comfort bath. Look at all that. Those are little wash rags, wet rags that you use to bathe yourself if the water isn't running, and as nice as this house may look on the outside, the water is frequently not running. Now we're going to do a little tour of what I call the underbelly of the house, areas where things often don't work. That starts right here in the newsroom, or the workroom, whatever you want to call it. These are many of the tapes that we have shot so far. This will tell you something right here, phones off the hook. That means they're not working. That is frequently the case because either the power is down or the satellite is not working. Up here, one of the really strange things about working here, 3 clocks, that is Dushanbe time. That's the capital of Tajikistan. That's the time that we go by because it's too confusing to go by local Afghanistan time because it's a half hour off. Over here we have the kitchen, and this is a ritual that goes on every day. They are separating the rice. It's great, but I tell you, if cleanliness and things like hot water and electricity are really big, important things to you, this is probably not the place for you.
Still ahead.
The water was cold. It was survivable, but cold. And we looked at the caves across the river. The river was probably 30 yards across. And the cameraman and I decided to make the first run over, trying not to drop his $40,000 NBC News camera into the drink. Outside pouch, power bars, sometimes all you get to eat. A stolen spoon and fork from a hotel, in case you do find something real to eat. Baby wipes, still camera, nasal inhaler, aspirin, spare glasses, stolen hotel washcloth, your basic multi-tool, and my personal favorite of all the things that I carry are these eye patches. You get them on airlines. And if you got to steal a half hour's sleep, some cat nap, some power nap, that's the only way to do it.
In Afghanistan, hostile tribal factions, the Northern Alliance, Al-Qaeda, and the difficult and desolate terrain itself inhibits movement and often brings the business of broadcasting to a standstill. As you will see, getting the job done while in harm's way isn't an easy one.
They can do it through the trees?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Trees won't be much of an obstruction.
Okay. Murad?
Yeah.
Bombing.
Yeah.
Can you explain to the commander we're going to have a big satellite dish right here. It's 5 feet across, 2 meters across. I've always reduced reporting down to the de minimis, the bare minimum. You see something happen, you hear something, you learn something, and you tell somebody else about it. That's it. It's not brain surgery. It's just being observant and then telling somebody else what you've learned. And that was what we've done here.
You do this every morning?
Yeah, I see every morning. But sometime on this, looks
very frizzy.
Yeah.
I missed my beard. I had a beard for 30 years.
Yeah, 30 years.
30 years I had it. But we'd gone down to Tora Bora a couple of times, getting as close as we could. Everybody had been talking about the cave complex that Osama bin Laden and his Al-Qaeda guys were supposedly hidden in. We were searching for caves as close as we could get to where Osama bin Laden is reportedly hiding in Tora Bora, south of Jalalabad, and we found these. The boat that would take us there was 3 inner tubes loosely lashed together. And the water was cold. It was survivable, but cold. And we looked at the caves across the river. The river was probably 30 yards across. And the cameraman and I decided to make the first run over, trying not to drop his $40,000 NBC News camera into the drink. We were taken across by a kid. There was a guide wire, and the kid is kind of feeding hand over hand. And I got to the other side and just jumped off, you know, thanks for the ride. Ira stayed there, and the kid went, you know, how much? And in fact, on the way out, the kid stopped about 8 yards out into the river and said, more money. I should let Ira tell this story, but the kid held him up for like 600 Pakistani rupees, $10.
We crossed the river and then hiked to a 1,000-year-old complex of more than a dozen caves. In the same mountain range as bin Laden's reported underground maze, but some 20 miles away. Shah Mahmood knows the history of Afghanistan's caves and has heard bin Laden's hideout is vast.
Between 200 to 300 people in different caves that are near each other.
The empty caves we explored were just as large. This one was some 80 by 50 feet, with a dozen chambers off the main room. Tunnels that connected to other caves, man-made water troughs for drinking water or an electrical generator, lookouts and escape hatches in every direction.
And it was like the Galleria. I mean, there was a huge main area. In fact, it had been a bazaar probably 1,000 years ago, and nobody lived in them now, but this was the type of complex that went back centuries, if not millennia. Tunnels leading off it, escape hatches, lookouts, second floors, basement floors, third floor lingerie. I mean, it had everything in it.
We pushed south toward Tora Bora, through desolate terrain, and ran into a team of local militia who warned us, go no further.
If you want to go that places, the place is too dangerous.
Have there been times when we have felt as a team that it was time to withdraw or be safe? Absolutely. We have plenty of security, mujahideen, so you'll take care of us, right? We got rocket launchers, RPGs. We're all set. The hardest thing about this job, I don't know if there's really a hardest thing about this job. Everything is more complex, more difficult than the job of reporting usually is. Only because there's more information to process, there's more danger, there are more individual risks to try and measure. We just heard the detonation, and you can see behind me the cloud dispersing from where the bomb hit. There are days that go 22, 23 hours, at the end of which we all start bitching about it, but you're so busy following a story like this that you don't have time to reflect. You finally get back wherever you are, to whatever your billet is. You take your boots off, you relax, you wash your face.
And then when we're back in camp eating dinner or sleeping a little bit, then you start thinking about, what happened, and that's when the human side starts coming back over.
Yeah, like, holy, what were we doing out there? What happened to those people?
Was that me out there? It's like a different movie.
Extra time.
This has been a terrific experience, and I'm sure that we'll all think about this for the rest of our lives.
Still ahead.
Very difficult to see innocent victims of landmines. Very difficult to deal with that.
How did he lose his leg?
This is from a mine?
From mine. Yeah. That's an indication that people here think life is improving and they're optimistic about the future. Only a week ago, you got 130,000 Afghanis to the dollar. Today, it's down to 40,000 Afghanis to the dollar. It's improved by almost 3 to 1 to the dollar, and that's a pretty good sign that people think the future is looking up.
Afghans, it seemed, are so sick and tired of 23 years of war that they seem to be willing to forgive, if not forget. You go to the downtown bazaar, you talk to people. Radishes, good, nice. How much? I'd like to buy some radishes. Hundreds and hundreds of people will tell you that now they're living a dream come true. The change of mood here has been phenomenal. You can't compare it. When I came here 12 weeks ago, the Taliban still controlled Kabul. They controlled 90% of this country. Now, of course, they are history.
Kabul today is a sprawl of 2 million, mostly refugees, a city racked by 22 years of war. The Taliban is gone, but in its place there are fresh challenges, trying to forge a new Afghanistan with very old tools. This is Kabul's version of Kinko's. Mohammed scrapes by like 2 generations before him, taking passport and ID photos with the only technology here.
My grandfather had a camera like this, which he bought in 1906.
My snapshot could be just as old. But around the corner, there's a new site in town.
Okay, is the movie starting?
Yes.
Yeah, let's go see it.
This Taliban lecture hall is a movie theater once again. But this is Afghanistan. Ushers carry AK-47s.
Here, you're checking in a Kalashnikov. Here's a 9mm pistol and an assortment of knives. I would not want to be the checkout lady in this movie theater. An assortment of Kalashnikovs, amazing. Trying to wean people off of their weapons and into a peaceful environment. That's going to be the hardest thing to do. Creating the mentality here so that kids who only know how to shoot guns can start doing other things.
This is the first film shown here since entertainment was banned by the Taliban 5 years ago.
There have to be hundreds and hundreds of people, all men, all Afghan men, in this movie theater watching this movie. It is big and it is absolutely jam-packed.
Ali, the projectionist, has his old job and the older machines back. But after so many years, it's hard to find good help. Still, Ali tells me he's upbeat. I hope there will be peace now, he says. We are so sick of war.
Covering wars, covering a story really changes you a little bit. Covering wars, I think, change one quite a bit. It was very difficult to see innocent victims of landmines. Very difficult to deal with that. How did he lose his leg?
This girl I want to see.
Alberto Cairo, an Italian pushing 50, lives and works in perpetual motion. Rebuilding disabled Afghans' lives literally limb by limb with boundless enthusiasm.
This is a place of joy, of hope, not a place of sorrow.
For 12 years, he's run the International Committee of the Red Cross Orthopedic Center in Kabul, making and fitting new limbs for hundreds of amputees each month. It's arguably the world's biggest project of its kind. Over 40,000 Afghans have lost a limb in a quarter-century of war, while millions of landmines injure or kill 10 victims each day. Cairo, a trained physiotherapist, has turned part of his clinic into a prosthesis factory, using cheap local materials.
This is the knee.
Like rubber from recycled Russian army tires, glass shards from blown-out windows. His center has survived 6 Afghan regimes, civil war, the Taliban, and recent U.S. bombing.
Even though most organizations had a very difficult time meeting the Taliban restrictions, managed somehow to persuade them with his infectious sense of humor and personality to let him do his job, and he did it through all of those Taliban years. He never shut that shop up once.
People need legs. Okay, that's done. Corsets, splints, whatever. But they need also to be, above all, to be put back into society with a role.
So Cairo introduced what he calls positive discrimination. Almost all staff of nearly 300 Afghan helpers, men and women, are war amputees as well. Seminars train disabled tutors who travel themselves to remote locations, giving lessons and a better chance to poor disabled kids like Edgar. Through it all, Alberto Cairo has never stopped giving. Some have even dubbed him the Angel of Kabul.
Beautiful son, not an angel. The angels are the Afghans. They lead a life which is sometimes miserable, and they manage to cope with situations that impossible. I mean, I don't know how they do. So they are the angels, not me. No, it's okay.
The Afghan people have a buoyancy about them, a childlike humor. They have managed somehow to cope with horrific misery for the past quarter of a century, civil war upon civil war. So what they have gone through is indescribable, and yet they've managed to come out and maintain their hospitality, their sense of humor, and their humanity. And I find that something that I'll certainly will bring back with me and remember.
Still ahead.
Here is my passport, and this will give you an idea of the shots you have to get to go to this part of the world. Everything from oral typhoid to meningitis, hepatitis A, and down here hepatitis B, influenza, of course, rabies, Japanese encephalitis. Anytime you pull a camera out, you've got a big gang of people like this, and whenever people say to me, where are you from, and I say America, it is amazing the number of times they have then said to me, thank you, thank you. They understand that it is partly because of us that they are now much freer than they were under the Taliban. So here I am, and it has been incredible. It has been an amazing experience to see history made, to see the new administration of Hamid Karzai sworn in, to meet with the U.S. troops who are here fighting terrorism, to meet the people of Afghanistan, especially. Down here are some of the guys who are working for us. Hello. Hello, gentlemen. How are you tonight? Hey, how are you? Good to see you. Translators, drivers, fixers, coordinators, houseboy, various people who are helping us out. Absolutely fantastic. These three are the local shoe shine boys, the ones sitting down there, and they know where their bread is buttered, because even though our shoes don't need polishing, take a look at this boot. In the dusty city, you do not need to get your shoes shined, but how can you not give those kids a couple of bucks to shine your shoes? So about every other day we all get our shoes shined, and that's why they hang outside the house. So this has been just an amazing experience, partly because of the news value of it, partly because the people of Afghanistan have just worked their way into my heart.
In a room of hardened warriors, eyes filled with tears at sound of Afghanistan's national anthem.
One of the biggest stories I have covered since I've been here is certainly the swearing in of Hamid Karzai. The high point of that entire day was the national anthem. Don't forget, they haven't had music in this country for 5 years. The Taliban banned it completely. Up on stage, I saw very little reaction. I was surprised nobody was singing, and then my producer tapped me on the shoulder and pointed at the audience. Tears were streaming down the faces of these battle-grizzled warriors all over the auditorium. It was an absolutely chilling moment.
The nation's new leader, Hamid Karzai, sworn in during a prayer-filled ceremony. His cabinet of 29 members, a cross-section of Afghanistan's ethnic groups, and 2 women, one a deputy prime minister. It will be a long journey, Karzai told his audience, and he said, I'm a novice. I need your help. But he will need much more than that.
Outside the auditorium, there were all these armed militia people belonging to different warlords, and it showed one of the big problems the country is going to have.
In Kabul today, people gathered around televisions, wherever they could find them, to see history being made. This man says, we're very happy. A new government.
There was some real euphoria right afterward, and I think people are still very happy to have the Taliban gone. It really is a sense of freedom.
But now, Karzai says, there's another risk.
If we deliver the Afghan people what we promised, this will be a great day. If we don't deliver, this will go into oblivion.
They also now are confronting everything from the economy to those armed militia members who seem to be just about everywhere a very, very long way before they can really even hope to live in peace and prosperity. Well, this is my room. It's similar to a college dormitory room, minus the pizza boxes and beer cans. It's really not that rough. No, it's not like some of those guys in northern Afghanistan had to endure before Kabul fell. And look at this. We even have a satellite hookup for the computer and a satellite phone. All the modern conveniences. This is the local currency. This is the Afghani. That is about 4 million Afghanis. About 5 years ago, that was worth about $8,000. That is now worth less than $200. Here is my passport, and this will give you an idea of the kind of shots you have to get to go to the world. Everything from oral typhoid to meningitis, hepatitis A, and down here hepatitis B, influenza, of course, rabies, Japanese encephalitis. I also had to take malaria pills, whether it was warmer, malaria season passed. And speaking of the medical stuff, NBC sends us out with these medical kits, everything from Pepto-Bismol to diarrhea medicine to cold medicine, and in fact, they even give us our own hypodermic needles just in case you really get sick and you have to go to the hospital, along with rubber gloves, just in case you need to get an injection. That's supposed to keep us safe so far. Haven't had any major problem. Here, look at this. NBC, I think, thinks we're going to be here for the rest of this millennium. We have enough MREs here to feed a small army, literally. So bottom line is we have enough stuff here to keep us in Kabul or wherever else they want to send us for a very long time.
Since the attacks on the World Trade Center, NBC News has sent more than 100 people into Afghanistan to cover the war. Before they carried out their assignments, though, many of them had to undergo 3 days of intensive survival training, including lessons in medical triage. That's our reporter tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm John Siegel.
Wilson's made call last watch. Sanders, stand down. Nice working with you.
Hey.
Get out of here.
For the latest reports from NBC correspondents around the world, go to prime.msnbc.com.
From the White House